Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Kate Greenus. I am the Community Coordinator for the New Mexico Environment Department. And I've been part of this New Mexico PFAS blood testing project since 2023. I also wanted to let you know if you need ASL interpretation, we have an interpreter over here. And we have a few seats reserved right in front of them. But I think if nobody comes and needs interpretation, then I will let him take a break. So, but please let us know if you need interpretation by coming to the site. Thank you. And just real quickly.
Buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Kate Fernandez y yo estoy en el departamento trabajando en esto desde 2000. Bienvenidos y gracias por venir. Me llamo Kate Cárdenas y yo soy la coordinadora de la participación comunitaria para el Departamento de Medio Ambiente de Nuevo México. Llevo parte de este programa de los PFAS, en español son los químicos eternos, desde el 2023. Entonces, antes de empezar, si hay alguien que necesita interpretación de señas, pueden pasar adelante y tenemos un intérprete de señas aquí. Hemos apartado unos asientos para cualquier persona que necesite interpretación de señas. En el caso de que no haya nadie, entonces le vamos a permitir que el intérprete tome un receso. También, si hay alguien aquí presente que quisiera interpretación en español, si puede pasar ahí atrás y le entregamos los audífonos. If there's anybody here that would like to have Spanish interpretation, if you can meet us in the back, and we'll give you the headphones.
Okay, so before we kick this thing off, I'd like to go over some information real quickly. I just want to let you know that the restrooms are out these doors and to the left. You're also welcome to visit the tables outside throughout this meeting and consult with a healthcare provider if you would like. And then after Secretary Kenny's opening remarks, we'll present the results of the New Mexico PFAS blood testing project, followed by a question and answer session. And we would like you to just hold your questions until then. And I also want to let you know that we are live streaming this meeting to NMED's Facebook page, and we'll be posting a recording to our YouTube page. So if you have any questions for the panel that you do not feel comfortable sharing with the internet, we will be available after 7:45 to talk with you. So with that, I'd like to introduce the Cabinet Secretary of the New Mexico Environment Department, James Kenny.
Good evening, everybody. Let me see if I can adjust this real quick. Kate just reminded me she's 5'2" and I'm 6 foot. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. I just wanted to first recognize that you have a distinguished member of the New Mexico Legislature. Your Senator Pat Woods is here. Senator Woods, just a thank you for coming. Just a round of applause. If we couldn't do this without you and our partners in the legislature, and if I missed anyone else, I'm happy to recognize you as well. I will be very brief this evening because this evening is about you and providing you information because of your participation in the PFAS blood testing study that we conducted here in the community. And last summer, I was here committing to you that we will do more to make this community whole with respect to PFAS contamination. And tonight I'm happy to report that we've not only lived up to those promises, but we're going to continue living up to those promises so So this isn't something that we now finish and move on. This is, again, a continuation of the work we're going to do in the community for you and for a long-term cleanup. So tonight is about helping you understand the PFAS blood testing study and whether you participated in that study and received your results, or you did not participate in that study. I think there's really great information that we can share with you however or whyever you are here this evening. And part of that is helping you maybe to think about what are those discussions that you may want to have in the future with your healthcare provider. And again, whether you participated in the study or did not participate in the study, if you need assistance from us, from the state of New Mexico, whether it's myself or my colleagues with the Department of Health, in initiating that conversation, just ask us. I know that some of this is, we spend our time working on this all day, every day, and maybe this is not something you're very comfortable with. That's okay. That's perfectly fine. Our goal tonight is to get you more comfortable and help you understand how to maybe start that conversation if you want to with a healthcare provider. Tonight is also about helping you understand that we have additional resources. So if you've not had your private well water tested, you can sign up for free private well water testing outside this room. It's also about helping you understand what to do with those results. If you have private well water tests that show you have PFAS in it and you don't have a filter yet, we can help you with that. And everything that I'm talking about, from drinking water testing, private well water testing, or filtration, or the ongoing maintenance of those filtration, we have the money in the bank. I'm not asking Senator Woods for more money yet, but I am telling you we have the money at the state agencies ready to deploy it for you. So this is a matter of you signing up, us performing a service with you, and then us paying for those services. And TLC, who is under contract with the New Mexico Environment Department, is outside the room with examples of the types of filters that can go under your sink or for your whole house. You can see what they look like as well. In further good news, just a little preview because you're here tonight with us, I wanted to also share that thanks to the help of the legislature, thanks to the governor, and thanks to the advocacy that is happening from within this community and rallying for this community, another $12 million is going to EPCOR, the public water provider. We're going to announce that publicly tomorrow, but again, I wanted to give you a preview of that this evening. That $12 million is going to the community to connect rural Curry County with the public water supply. So you can choose now, and I hope you do, to maybe move off private drinking water wells and move into a reliable public water supply as supplied by EPCOR. And that $12 million will bring pipes out, and then again, we have additional funding to connect that trunk, that line, directly to your home. So this is I hope it turns out to be, and our intent is a zero-cost proposition for you to switch from private well water to public drinking water. So the things that I'm saying, I hope that for some of you, you realize we've delivered on those to date. And if you've not had the benefit of any of the services we've offered to the community, again, please pull us aside and tell us there's something that you would like to see happen. And if there's something that we've not done in the community that you're wondering why we haven't, it could be that we just haven't met and talked. So please identify additional things that you want to see the state of New Mexico do for Curry County, and we will strongly consider those, just like many of the suggestions you gave me last August are the things we've now implemented, and we will continue to do that. So we also know long-term cleanup is still something that needs to happen in this area, and we are focused in and working hard to make sure that we do get long-term cleanup at the cost of, or to the cost of the Defense Department, but not to the cost of New Mexicans. If we have to shoulder that cost, we will try to get that reimbursed, and that's what we're working on as well, and have been for now a number of years. But again, those short-term fixes that make meaningful and tangible changes to your day, your livelihood, how you interact with your land, how you interact with your water, how you think about, what do I do when I need to shower or prepare baby formula? Those are the things that we're trying to bring directly to the community as quickly as possible, while we focus on those long-term solutions and those long-term cleanups that, again, New Mexico should not shoulder the cost on. Those should be paid for by the federal government. So if there's anything you take away from, at least from my remarks, know that we're here to help. We're not going anywhere. We're unwavering about our commitment. And if you walk away with a little bit more confidence this evening about having agency over whether it's your land, your water, or your health, then we've succeeded. And that is largely our goal for this evening. So without further ado, we're going to now move into the next segment of the presentation and go through our PFAS blood testing results. And again, thank you for being here, for spending time with us, taking time away from your family, or maybe you're here with your family. And thank you for being here this evening with us.
Sorry about that, I'm trying to. I'd like to introduce Jonah Wilhelmi. He has probably met a lot of you during the blood sampling that we did, and also in some of those one-on-one open houses that we did in the community too. So he's going to be presenting the PFAS blood testing project final results.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name again is John Wilhelmi. I work for a company named Eastern Research Group, or ERG, and we were the contractor that helped implement the PFAS blood testing here in Clovis. And I was asked to come today to talk about the results from the final report, which is the community-wide results. So these are different from your individual letters. I won't be presenting individual data up here, but I'll be talking about what we observed community-wide from the blood testing. There are people here who could answer questions that you have about your individual results, and that's going to be handled outside. So what I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about the project and then present the community results. The project, as you know, was led by the New Mexico Environment Department and the New Mexico Department of Health, and the goal was to measure PFAS levels in the blood of adult New Mexico residents who lived in certain areas near and on Cannon Air Force Base in Curry County. More specifically for the objectives, we wanted to get a sense of the community-wide PFAS levels in blood, compare those to what we've seen nationwide, and also see if there were any trends in the blood results that could be linked to your exposure histories. So I'm going to be talking about all of those tonight. There's some other objectives noted here, more from the agency perspectives that they'll be talked about later. So before I get too far, I'll talk a little bit about PFAS. You've heard a lot about this over the years, I'm sure. And we talked about this at the beginning of every appointment that people had, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. PFAS are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. These are a group of synthetic or man-made chemicals. These don't occur naturally. And they're found in a wide range of products, or they have been found, and some still are. That could be firefighting foam, paper products, some upholstery, fabrics, cosmetics, many others. Why are they of concern? A few reasons. One, we know that they build up in our bodies, and they also break down very slowly. So some people, when they get a blood test result, it can actually contain PFAS that entered your body decades ago. And that's very unique in terms of environmental contamination. And And it's for that reason that people refer to these as forever chemicals. Another reason of concern is that they're toxic. And this table lists some health effects that have been associated with higher PFAS exposures. So they include, if exposures are high enough, you can have changes in your cholesterol levels, your liver enzymes, immune function. There's some reproductive effects that have been associated with exposures, and certain cancers. So I want to note a few things about this list. So just because this list is up here doesn't mean that you will automatically get these conditions if PFAS were in your blood. Whether someone gets these depends on how much you were exposed to, for how long, during what stages of your life, whether you have pre-existing conditions, and many other factors. But another point I wanted to make is that this is based on what we know now scientifically. And this is a very rapidly evolving field. If I were to come back in 10 years and give this presentation, or if I was even to come back next year and give this presentation, I'm sure this list would be much longer in terms of scientists finding more and more about how PFAS affects health. So the reasons we're concerned, again, these are synthetic, not natural chemicals. They build up in our bodies, they don't break down easily, and they're toxic. Another concern at a local scale is that we know that there is documented evidence of releases of PFAS into soil and groundwater from the base. And I'll start to build up on that a bit more on this slide. So there are many areas statewide that have PFAS contamination. Why do this project here? I listed a few examples on this slide. First, we know that there are areas that have PFAS contamination in the groundwater. So one of them being in this area around the southeast corner of the base and elsewhere. So one of the reasons we're concerned is that we know these chemicals are underground. A second reason why we're concerned is that PFAS have been detected in some drinking water samples, whether from some public water systems or private wells. So that adds to the concern. We know the chemicals are underground, but we also know that for some people there's a pathway by which those chemicals could come and enter our bodies if we're drinking from a contaminated source. And finally, there's, as people are aware, community impacts. There's the PFAS contamination that severely affected the Highland Dairy. That was widely publicized, of course. So at the end of the day, the state decided to launch this project, and the people who are eligible to participate either lived or worked within this white boundary. Now, this doesn't mean if you lived or worked within the boundary that you were automatically exposed. It's just this is what the terms were for the project, that those who lived or worked within that region were eligible to participate. Okay, you all have lived through this project. You know the timeline, but I'll review it briefly here. It all started a little over a year ago in this room, where there was a public meeting to kick off the project. For 3 months after, we did the recruitment, and we held 3 week-long blood sampling events at the Youth Recreation Building, just down the street. Starting in February is when people received their individual results, and that happened for a few months. If you participated and didn't receive them, please let someone know outside before you leave tonight. August is when the official report was released for the community-wide results. Again, that's what I'm presenting tonight. It's different from your individual results letters. And here we are tonight, at the final public meeting. All right, I'll go through some details of the project. There's a lot of numbers on the right-hand side. I'll just emphasize this one here. That at the end of the day, there were 628 people who we confirmed were eligible to participate and who provided blood samples. And everything I talk about tonight is going to be based on those 628 blood samples. I will say that the participation here far exceeded my expectations, and I'm sure many others. It was really nice to see the community mobilize come forward to participate in this. On the left-hand side, we talk about what the appointments entailed, and if you participated, you remember. It included an exposure history questionnaire where you asked you all kinds of questions about where you live, work, where you get your drinking water, what your diet consists of, and so on. And we also collected a blood sample from every participant, which our staff then processed, and we sent the serum portion of your sample to a laboratory that tested for 33 chemicals. I'll move into the results. This talks about the demographics or the profile of people who participated. There's a lot that I could say here about that, but it generally reflected the local population when you considered it an inclusive base. And the report has a lot more on that, but I want to focus most on the blood test results. So I'm going to talk about three things here. I'm going to talk about what chemicals were detected. I'm going to talk about how much of them were detected, and then I'll also discuss some of the higher levels of the detected. So this is about which chemicals were detected. So we tested every sample that we received for 33 of these PFAS. 17 of them were never detected in any of the participants. 16 of them were detected in at least one participant. But the dominant ones were the ones shown at the bottom, PFAS, PFHXS, and PFNA. These were detected in more than 90% of the participants' blood. And the table here lists some of the sources that contain these chemicals. You know, we can't tell from your sample exactly where the PFAS came from. It probably was from some combination of the sources shown here and some others. But overall, more than 99% of the participants had at least one PFAS detected. And there were 2 people, 2 out of the 628 that didn't have any. So I will say, though, that this is consistent with what we see at a national level. That more than 99% of Americans, it's known, do have these chemicals in their bodies. So this is what chemicals were detected. I want to get to how much. And this is a comparison of what was measured here across the 628 samples to what we see nationwide as reported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. So I'll walk you through this. The bluish columns, this is what was measured here among the 628 participants on average for the 4 chemicals listed here. The green is what has been reported as national averages by the CDC for the same chemicals. So you'll see it looking at this that the green columns are taller than the blue ones, and that means that the national averages are higher than what was measured here on average. And I can flip that around and say the average here was lower than what we've seen at a national level. But I do want to point out one thing, that this isn't a perfect comparison because your data, your samples are from 2024, last year. The most recent national average published by CDC for this one survey is 7 to 8 years old. So the reason this isn't a perfect comparison is that we know the national averages are coming down. So these green columns would probably be a little bit lower if we had more current data, but we don't. So again, this is how much was in your blood of these chemicals. The third part I wanted to talk about was the highest levels that we observed. And I'll talk about a few things here. So in your results letters, you should have received some medical screening recommendations. This says from NASA. That's the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. So this isn't something where the National Academies saw your data and prepared these recommendations. These are general recommendations that they have for PFAS blood tests. And I'll walk through these. So at the lowest tier, people have very little detected in their blood. There's no special health screenings recommended. The middle tier, the screening recommendations are for high cholesterol, high blood pressure among pregnant women, and breast cancer, as well as a recommendation to reduce exposure. And then there's some additional recommendations for people who are in the highest level. So I want to emphasize a few things. That just because these are listed as recommendations, that doesn't mean you'll automatically get these diseases or conditions. It just means that out of an abundance of precaution, you are recommended to be screened for these as part of your routine medical visits. But I will chip away at this highest level here. So again, above 20 micrograms per liter. I'll just point out these last two bulleted items, that out of 628 participants, there were 14 that were in that level. It's about 2.2%, so it's roughly 1 out of every 50 participants were in that level. But nationwide, about 9% of the U.S. population are estimated to be in this level. So overall, whether I'm looking at the average levels for the community or some of these higher levels, they are lower than what we're seeing at the national level. But there's an important part I want to add to this. Okay, so this now gets to your exposure histories. And I said we would look for any linkages between blood test results and exposure history. And for those who participated, you probably remember we asked you, I think it was 50 or more questions. Where did you live? Where you worked? Where you get your drinking water at home and at work? What do you eat? And so on. And we looked at combinations and permutations of all these to see how they would explain the PFAS results. And the one strongest predictor that came out was residential and occupational location, specifically those who lived or worked within what we call the plume area in the report. So this is an area, there's a base that extends southeast from the base. So for that subset of participants, they did have higher levels than national averages in comparison to the other participants. So PFHXS among these individuals in their blood was more than 3 times higher than the national average. And PFAS was also a stronger signal among this population than among the other participants. And I said before, about 1 in 50 participants program-wide were above the 20 microgram per liter medical screening guideline. For this subset of participants, it's about 1 in 4. And we did think about this. What is the common factor that would lead to these higher levels among a subset of participants? And we note in the report that a common factor most likely is through ingestion of contaminated drinking water. That's the most logical inference that we could come up with. We do acknowledge that there could be other explanations. So even though program-wide, community-wide, lower than national averages, this subset was clearly above. This slide presents the same information, but visually. So I already showed these blue columns are for all participants combined, the average PFAS levels in your blood. The green columns are the national averages that are a little bit outdated. I've added here the orange columns, which are for the participants who ever lived or worked in that plume area. So I'll just repeat what I said before. The strongest signal is here for PFHXS. If you lived or worked in the plume area, your levels were considerably and significantly, statistically, higher than national averages and the rest of the population that participated. And there's also a strong signal for PFAS compared to the other participants. And I have a feeling that PFAS levels in the plume area are probably higher than national averages today because of PFAS levels being coming down. And this is my last slide of findings. So the report has a bunch of additional results, and something we did again is compare what we saw in the blood versus what you reported to us in your questionnaires. do a bit of a lightning round on this one, and it's only because the effect was smaller. The strongest effect by far was previous or current residency or working in the plume area. So these were much smaller effects, and they were older participants, on average, had higher PFAS levels than younger ones. The PFAS build up over time. Men, all other things considered equal, tend to have higher levels of PFAS than women, and there's some reasons for that as well. The participants who told us that they frequently donate blood or plasma has significantly lower PFAS levels than everyone else. And those that reported a work history in certain occupations like firefighting and military and or aviation were linked to higher PFAS concentrations. But for all of these, the magnitude or the amount of the effect was much lower than what I showed on the previous slide. Again, the strongest signal was for those who lived or worked in the plume area. But everything that I just went through here is also consistent with what we've seen in other studies nationwide. So a few other things. This is all documented and more. And the final report that was prepared for this, there are copies of that outside. I think that includes also a brief 1 or 2 page summary in more community-friendly language that's in the report. So please feel free to pick those up. There'll be a time to answer questions also here. But the final thing I wanted to say is a nice part of this project. I've been involved in some projects before where a government agency comes in, does some work, issues a report, and moves on. But the agencies here that are involved have committed to some next steps, which we are about to learn about now, starting with Chelsea.
I'm with the New Mexico Department of Health and the Environmental Health Epidemiology Bureau. So for the Department of Health, we have followed up with the participants who have the highest PFAS levels, which included sending a packet of materials and a follow-up phone call with, what additional recommendations there are for screenings. If any of those 14 have further questions or we can help connect with resources to get the screenings done, please call our helpline and they will send you to us, and we'll be very happy to answer any questions and help you connect to resources. We also will continue to educate local healthcare providers about PFAS health effects, as well as develop and publicly disseminate on our website frequently asked questions about PFAS and health. I'll turn it back to Secretary.
Thank you, Chelsea. For the New Mexico Environment Department, our 3 bullets that we are now embarking on include continuing to evaluate the groundwater PFAS mitigation and remediation opportunities. We're both doing that in and outside of litigation. As many of you know, there's ongoing litigation to hold the Department of Defense accountable for the cleaning up of the plume on and off base. But we're going to continue to evaluate options, or opportunities, I should say. One of the things that falls into this category as a next step, as you heard, the comparative data nationally to the local data from last year is about 7 to 8 years old. So as new data sets come out from the federal government, we want to compare the Curry County data to more recent updates to see if that changes anything. So that's something else we're going to continue to look at as our next steps. The second bullet here is to expand PFAS exposure assessments. What we learned here in Curry County by your participation is that the Holloman Air Force Base, where there has been camping and allowing New Mexicans and others who come into the state by White Sands to use that recreation area, may have also resulted in exposure there, not through drinking water, but simply by outdoor recreation, whether that is hunting of wild game or camping along the beach of Lake Holloman, etc. So we're starting another health assessment that's not blood test driven, but again, through the findings here, we're sort of taking this and applying it in a different way over at Holloman Air Force Base. And we'll eventually, if you visited there, there's a survey you could take, and we'll share that with you at one point this evening. And then the last bullet, again, this isn't a short-term answer to some of the short-term remedies that we've been trying to provide to this community, but the third bullet here is to strengthen and enforce our regulations to protect against future contamination. I might want to add that this last legislative session, we had 2 bills. It doesn't feel satisfying to be standing in your community talking about bills that pass the legislature, because I feel like that's, you know, a necessary thing that we have to do in government, but it doesn't sort of make your lives different tomorrow. But the bills that we did pass will actually start to matter in this community, because one of those bills prohibits the use of firefighting phones at military bases, but for actual emergencies. So no more training with known carcinogens and deploying that on bases and letting it soak into the groundwater. So that bill has passed, is now state law, and then we have another bill that passed that removes PFAS from consumer products, things like frying pans and lipstick and juvenile products like clothing and toys, etc. And that's working its way now through a rulemaking process. So again, over time, some of these will be more beneficial to Mexicans than others, but what we learned here in our continued commitment to this community is definitely shaping the policy and laws of the state of New Mexico. Where am I going next, Kate? I'm sitting down, thank you.
I found that really informative, and I've been part of this project since the beginning. Thank you, John. Okay, so now we continue questions. I think Drew are going to be running around with a microphone. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and we'll come to you. Before the first question, I would like each panelist, please, to introduce yourself and who you work for and what your role is. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Hausinger. I'm a hydrologist with the New Mexico Environment Department, working for the Water Protection Division, focusing on bringing filters to help improve the situation.
I'm Chelsea Langer. I'm with the New Mexico Department of Health and the Environmental Health Epidemiology Bureau.
Hi everyone. Kevin Biney. I'm the Public Health Division Director for the New Mexico Department of Health.
I already introduced myself, John Mulholmy. I was responsible for helping to implement the blood testing work and evaluating the results.
Good evening again. My name is Jim Kenny. I'm the Cabinet Secretary of the New Mexico Environment Department. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Raise your hand. Okay, I'm coming to you.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got 2 questions. The first one is, have we established a boundary so that we know how fast this plume is moving, if it is moving, or is it contained?
Senator Woods, thank you for that question. We have established a boundary of the plume that we know of today. The plume is moving. There's speculation as to how many feet per year it's moving. Some say 2, some say 20, but it's not contained as of now.
So it's moving south and west,
Southeast.
southeast, from 15 to 20 foot is our guess migration right now.
Yes, Senator Woods, that would be correct. The ability for us to know how fast and far it's moving depends on how many monitoring wells we can drill and sample and look for its movement so we can then try to best as we can model how it's flowing. Access to property, as you might imagine, is sometimes challenging for us to drill those wells, and access to funding, with no criticism of the legislature, it just costs money and time to drill wells, and that is also a complicating factor. So access and the ability to drill wells are two obstacles in coming to certainty on that question.
Okay, and I guess the last one is more of a statement. I was out on the Cannon Air Force Base, and they put, a pretty good investment out there trying to pump water up, clean it, re-inject it, and their best estimate was that they might make progress in the next 30 years. It's going to be a real long time, and they're using a polymer to trap that PFAS chemical, I guess you might say. Do we see that as a solution? I mean, do we need more of that? What are we seeing as a solution of how is there a solution? Is it much like some of the other plumes we have, around Kirtland? We've got a jet fuel plume, and we've been working on that for quite some time. Give me a best guess on the direction we're going to go and what the next administration. How would you advise the next administration? What would you advise them to do?
Thank you again, Senator. Those are good questions. So I think for all intents and purposes, the PFAS plume that is under the base, but not off base, under the base, is what the base is working to pump out of the ground, treat, and re-inject that water. The plume that has gotten out of the barn, the horse got out of the barn kind of thing, and has moved 4 miles now. That plume that is 4 miles off base has no plan other than most recently the Department of Defense said that they would finish their investigation in 2026, and then they moved it out to 2032. And that's the plan to study the remedial options. So we're not talking about a remedy yet. We're not talking about a solution. We're talking about a study that goes to 2032. So that plume will continue to move and migrate for that period of time. My advice would be that the state of New Mexico should continue to show leadership, and irrespective of the litigation that DOD has initiated with us, we should work with the local community as a state to incur those costs for cleanup, because 2032 is just letting the plume migrate further, impact more drinking water, impact more of the economy. So my suggestion would be is we act decisively to control that plume and prevent its spread as a state, and we seek to recover those costs later from the federal government.
Any more questions? Okay.
Seth Martin. I'm a farmer, irrigated farmer driving, something else, but that doesn't matter here. I hear a lot about the fault of any progress by DOD being at the landowners not allowing them access to drill these wells that you mentioned, monitoring wells. There's scattered wells all through the state that are presently being pumped, and access to those are readily available. needing to drill them, to me, seems like an excuse not to use what's already there and available. And they came at this in a way that they try to violate private property rights, using easements of the county, using easement of the state. And I got a picture today where they're drilling a well in the state easement along the highway. I think if some common sense was applied to finding plume with the wells that are there, progress would be made a lot quicker. I don't know why this isn't considered. Maybe you could tell me why the need for new wells when there's abundance already there.
Thank you for the question. I think common sense is a good place to try to return to. There are many wells that are perforating the groundwater that would be helpful for us to grab samples from. I agree with that. They may not be all in the right place for us to fully characterize the extent of the plume. So there may be some wells, but I do agree with you, maybe 80-20 rule, that there are enough wells out there that we can continue to monitor the plume. So no disagreement there. Ensuring that we have the right, what I call it, indemnifications in place so that landowners feel certain that if we find PFAS that they're not going to be caught up themselves into a lawsuit. Ensuring that the county, the landowner, and everybody are on the same page is a complicated effort, but not an impossible one. So I do think there are more opportunities to sample and characterize the plume, but I'm not sure that, let's move from characterization. Let's assume all that worked out just perfect as it could be, and common sense prevailed, and we got it all done. The next question would be how would the state of New Mexico and the landowners decide where the pump and treat system would be? And that pump and treat system needs to be at a geologically smart area, not necessarily a surface smart area, right? So it could be in the middle of somebody's field, it could be on the outskirts. Ideally, it'd be in that sort of side back 40 where nobody contested it. But where those wells need to be for that actual extraction, treatment, and reinjection also needs to be determined beyond just the sampling wells. And we're not there yet to be able to say, could we put a treatment system in the middle of your property? And then we might have to go down to another farmer and ask those same questions. So we're not willing to run over people's property rights. We want to work with the community in order to figure out some of the answers to those questions, and that's where we're at today. And it is a big resource sink on state resources to also be doing exactly what I described and what you're asking for while we're in it. No less than 3 lawsuits, which is frustrating. Common sense, I would love it.
Secretary, thank you for the visit today. And we had the reporter from the New York Times here. It was a good meeting. We took lots of pictures. We got a lot of good information today. The thing I'd like to add to what Seth said, you just said, is the simple thing is every well that's contaminated, tested, contaminated, that you're going around or anybody goes around, they need a filter. You got the filter guy here ready to go. And you filter this positive, a well, an irrigation well, a house well, anybody's well that's contaminated, just put a filter on it. And then we're filtering the contamination. Because right now what's happening is the farmers are contaminating the ground that's contaminated. We're continuing contaminating. And so and then anybody who's got contamination in their water or their house needs to be compensated for the devaluation of their property. Case closed. And everybody, all this goes away. People just want to get get compensation for what they lost. And that's all anybody has ever asked for. And I appreciate all that you guys have done. This has been really good. I think Senator Woods and everybody that's fighting for this to get this done. Thank you very much.
Okay, next up is in the back of the room. Give me 1 second.
Hello guys, thank you for being here, I appreciate the information. I lived on Cannon Air Force Base from 1984 to 1990. A lot of talk has been put out about what's going on outside of Cannon, but what about the people that live there, like me, and work on the flight line, surrounded by this stuff? Because I remember, are we still at risk? I was never informed of having to go get tested. I don't know how the list was put together or what kind of information was being put out. I still live here, and we don't know what's going on.
Well, I'll talk, you're asking about how, one of the questions was about how people became informed, and I think there was a bunch of different avenues through which the agency has made residents aware of this. And, through yard signs and social media posts and other things, press releases and others. So that's what I could say about that. I don't know if you wanted to add more.
Yeah, and sir, first, thank you for your service. I really sincerely mean that. And the fact that you may not have been eligible for the blood testing. One, I'm sorry you didn't hear about it. Two, the eligibility requirements, I'm not sure if you would have met them, but maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But in terms of additional information that you're speaking about, you had said, you're not being informed about maybe what's happening. Is that what's happening on base is what you're asking about with respect to the cleanup there?
So yeah, we've heard a lot of what's happening with the investigation, but my wife and I lived on that base in 1984 up to 1990, and then the PFAS issue surfaced a little bit later on publicly, right? In those days, we never knew anything about that. We drank the water, we lived there, we worked there, we were there, but later on, we found out that this PFAS issue was all over town. But what about, my real question is, what about the people that live on Cannon proper? Are those people at risk, still at risk? Were they selected to be tested? Will they be selected by DOD if you know? And what's going to be the end result?
So maybe an important distinction here is that when the state of New Mexico conducted the blood testing study, it was fully paid for by the state of New Mexico, by the Environment Department. So we've not received any funding or coordinated that blood testing through the Department of Defense. Now, we did reach out to the Department of Defense and they provided at Cannon information about the blood testing study at the time they were seeking people's participation. And we did have servicemen and women participate in the blood testing study itself. There was no restriction from, even though the state was paying for it, they were completely free to participate if they met the eligibility requirements, age, living in the area, etc. So I can't speak to how Cannon disseminated that information, but they were able and did participate in some degree. Cannon itself is also a public water system, meaning the men and women who live on base are serviced by a public water system, similar to how Clovis is serviced by EPCOR. Cannon is its own public water system, not serviced by EPCOR, but the water is treated on base and drinking water is provided to those individuals on base. That water has to meet federal and state requirements under the Safe Drinking Water Act. The standards for PFAS have not fully kicked in yet. They were under the prior federal administration. They were finalized under the current administration. They've been kept in place, a little bit of tweaking, but generally good standards are in place. And those PFAS standards are not applicable today anywhere. We're in what I would call the monitoring phase. Water systems are required to monitor and get ready. If they have to treat further, they'll be required to do that in another couple years. So I know the answer isn't entirely satisfying or maybe at all satisfying, but Canon is responsible for providing their servicemen and women or anybody on base with reliable, safe drinking water, and those standards are not fully in effect yet. So that, again, that's where things stand there. I will also just, as a last point, because there is a lot of litigation going on with respect to PFAS with the Department of Defense and therefore Canon, there's not a lot of information shared between the Department of Defense, Canon Air Force Base, and the state of New Mexico without a whole lot of attorneys involved. So most recently when we went to sample for PFAS at Canon Air Force Base, we were turned away and denied access. So it's hard to answer your question, and I understand it. It's hard to answer your question in a way that is probably satisfying for both of us.
Last question, I promise. If I or my wife want to be tested, how do we go about doing that if we can?
So right now the state is not providing blood testing. Now if there's a number of people in this room who would like their blood tested and have not had it and have not had testing done previously, I would ask that you flag one of us here on stage or in the back of the room and express that. I personally, I'm not eligible for blood testing in this community. I don't live here, I don't work here, etc. But you can go to also like Quest Diagnostics or Tricor, and they do the same panel of blood testing for 33 chemicals. The last I checked, it was about $250 or $350 to do that. So you can do it on your own dime. I'm just saying that, but again, if we have enough interest from the community to do, what was our sample set, 150 appointments? But for each 250. Yeah, we had about 200 people sign up at we did 3 rounds of sampling, and typically we look for getting about a critical mass of about 200 appointments. So again, if there's more interest in this community, we're not opposed to doing it. We would just need to reinvigorate like a second part of the study. Thank you for your questions. They're good questions.
Okay, I'm coming over to the other side of the room. I saw some hands over here, so I will come back to you next. As you ready.
Mr. King, as I spoke with you earlier, I just wanted to give you guys a vote of my gratitude for the work that you've done. I met with you guys last August and kind of expressed some of our concerns about water well testing and how long it had been. And you guys have been the first ones that came out and tested my well back in 2018. And you came out here this last fall and tested my well. And this new bill that you've passed in the legislation to build a new pipeline west of Clovis, east and south of the base, is just monumental. When you guys proposed that you were going to do something last year, you've done it. And I really thank you, Pat Woods, Senator Pat Woods, and Curry County Commissioner Seth Martin. He's too shy to mention all the work that he's done. He's been one of the greatest county commissioners that we've had on this project. And James Kinney, I just lift up my hands to you. This is really wonderful what you're doing, and I know you aren't finished yet, and this is your job, but you guys are doing more than your job. You're doing a heartfelt mission to make this happen. And the people here that will have to depend upon it really do thank you.
I got a question. You're talking about testing in Holland. Is that for anybody that was stationed there, or because I did my last year stationed over there? Would that mean go get another test, or just leave it as this is the way to go home for it?
So, thank you again for your service as well, and thank you for that question. At Holloman, what we're doing there is not blood testing. What we're asking people is, if you've gone to Lake Holloman, Rapid Lake, whatever you want to call it, and spent time there, then we want you to take a 10-minute survey online, and that'll give us a sense of how you spent time at Lake Holloman. So it's a little bit different of a survey, and it's a little bit different of an approach. It's not a blood test, it's a survey we're doing to get a better understanding of what else we should be doing for the community there.
Well, I thought y'all would be doing a blood test for sure. And the other gentleman over there, I do my medical on base, and you asked them about PFAS testing, and they know nothing about it.
You know, you're right. You and the other gentleman who were speaking are raising a good point, and this is something I've joined both federal and state veterans services departments in asking them as veterans exit service, as individuals exit service, and they're veterans in terms of seeking medical advice or routine screenings, will they provide PFAS screenings? And the answer I get as a non-veteran is, we don't do that. It's not routine. What I hear from veterans is if they want to get screening for PFAS, that it is almost impossible to do that at the federal or state level. I would love for us to see more support of the veteran community where PFAS is not something you have to fight to get a test on, but it's a regular and routine screening, so that once you establish the PFAS levels in a veteran, that you know what other medical screenings might also be necessary, to the points that were raised earlier. I would love to see us as a state and as a country move in that direction, but we are not there yet. Maybe we can do something as a state legislatively to push that forward.
One more thing. Also, for the people that are, like you're talking about, like different cancers, different health issues, if this develops, like let's somebody who has kidney cancer, tested for cancer, or whatever, is there going to be any support for those people? Or is it going to be, sorry about that? I'm not asking for free help. I'm not asking for anything free. It'd just be kind of nice if they develop cancer, somebody else would help pay some of the bills.
Yeah, I think you should ask. I don't think you're asking for anything free, but you're also not asking for anything that seems out of the ordinary. So in terms of, one, I think I have to, if any of my other panelists have a thought about this, I would ask them to jump in. But two, one of the things we're doing in our litigation is seeking damages to the state of New Mexico. And those damages are broad, both for environment, health, etc. So when we win those lawsuits, and I believe we will, then the next question is, what are we going to do with those damages? How do those damages get reallocated by our legislature, etc. So long term, I think we'll get there. Short term, for those men and women who might be suffering with some of these ailments and not know if there's a linkage to PFAS or not, I think this event tonight and the blood testing we've been doing provide you a little bit more agency to have that conversation with your medical provider. And then I think it's up to the state for something that could be linked. And I'll be just candid, we're not there yet as a state. I agree with you, but we're not there yet. Yeah, you had a good, tough question for me.
Hello, my name is Matthew Manhattas, and I'm the founder and director of Impact Outdoors. We take veterans, youth, service members, community leaders into the field for outdoor recreation engagements. We work on habitat and education and conservation efforts all over the state. Our primary focus has been from Guadalupe County all the way down to Holloman Lake. We offer oryx hunts, we offer mule deer hunts. If you're a veteran, you write me an email. I take you out, it's completely free. We have volunteers. Most of our volunteers are veterans, and last year I saw 260 veterans in the field personally, all for free, all through funding that we raise. My question is pertaining to the Holloman Lake survey. Are there any plans? I know that there's like work of a fence so that my mule deer and oryx can stare at water. But what is the plan for the birds that continue to land on Holloman Lake? And as an avid waterfowler who understands birds, I know that birds, they land where they need to be. Sometimes it's on a front, sometimes it's based off the moon, sometimes it's based off feed. But where they land and where they bounce around throughout this season is all just different based off of like pressure, different things. And I know that because we're successful because we scout hundreds of miles and we go from Santa Rosa Lake to Tres Lagunas, which is our brand new donated marshland outside of Santa Rosa where we teach our kids, where we also hunt with our vets. And then we go to Fort Sumner Lake. And when we don't find the birds there, then we go south. And when we find them, we follow them and we chase them all the way back so that we can guarantee great hunts for our vets and for our youth. Now, my question is, if these birds continue to land on Holloman Lake, the gate doesn't matter, the fence around the lake doesn't matter. And there really hasn't been any look or like any sort of reference to like what this means in terms of waterfowling up and down the Pecos watershed, which is the place that my education calls home and the place that my veterans return for healing. So we're talking about veteran levels and PFAS, the levels that they might already have from Iraq and Afghanistan, and yet they're in the field with me seeking healing, and I can't even tell them if they're gonna put PFAS on their dinner table. This is my son Carter. We waterfowl together. Carter's on his 14th waterfowl hunt with dad and with mom and with my 2 other younger boys. How do I guarantee that I'm not inviting PFAS to my dinner table every time I take someone for healing?
Matthew, first, I've heard about you, but it's nice to meet you, so look forward to maybe grabbing a card from you at some point as well. Second, you're raising a fantastic question and one that's, again, a difficult question to answer because as we know, those waterfowl, based on studies by UNM, which you're probably familiar with, show that, you know, dime-sized amounts of breast meat from those, I think it was breast meat, but I can't recall, can have a lifetime exposure of PFAS from ingesting that. So the problem you're pointing out is a significant one. The answer, I believe, is one that fences will protect people, like, won't protect the waterfowl, won't protect anybody or any of the animals, and causes some other problems. So what really needs to happen is that Lake Holloman needs to be fully cleaned up, fully remediated. You can't put a fence around it and expect wildlife to not find a way, right? And when you look around the country, and in my prior life, I was a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency field inspector, and I visited more chemical plants and refineries and bases and et cetera around the country. We are a state that has not exactly embraced what the rest of the country has, which is that wastewater going into an impoundment, and it sort of becoming a migratory bird, wetland, or marsh, whatever you want to call it, that should never have happened. You should not be able to put that concentration of PFAS into a man-made or natural lake. And that should be remediated fully before it ever gets into the open where people, animals, or anybody else could get involved with it, right? Like, Lake Holman is huge. It should not be as toxic as it is. That should be cleaned up.
With that toxicity, what are we looking at? Like, I heard 6 years, you know? I've been waterfowling in the Pecos Watershed Valley for 23 years. Some years we have 300 plus bird years because we work on habitat. We work on education all year round so that we can be successful. Does that mean that maybe I should just delay taking my bets in the field for 6 years because we're really not planning on working on Holloman for 6 years?
No, so good question, a little hard to answer. But if we leave the cleanup of Lake Holloman to the Department of Defense, they have said, again, it would be 2032 before they finish their investigation. That is entirely, not even cleanup, just the investigation. That is entirely too long, by my standard, to let a toxic surface impoundment sit there that will affect the ecology and wildlife of New Mexico and beyond. Your point of what do you do with your fantastic program and the people who need the healing and want to get out there, I think is a valid question for the state of New Mexico to act faster, and whether that means the Department of Defense continues to litigate. I can't be responsible for what they do, I can only be responsible for what we do, and what we're doing is trying to clean up as much PFAS as quickly as possible. I can't clean something up that I don't have access to. That's Department of Defense land. So it's a problem. It's a big problem. I will say, when we get to the solution, when we had the Gold King mine spill up in northwest New Mexico.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, yeah.
And there was a settlement there. We used that settlement money to invest in local outdoor recreation, to bring back the tourism industry, to bring back the farm industry. And there were a number of projects that were funded. Your organization would be a great project for us to fund with money that comes out of a settlement. I'm not ready to announce the settlement. I wish I was even hinting that we were that close, but we're not. So the state of New Mexico is going to have to continue to step up its litigation game. The Department of Defense should step down its litigation game because we're the only state in the country. Oh, like, I just really need people to understand this one point. We're the only state in the country that has an active lawsuit against us from the Department of Defense.
Okay.
And that is a huge problem. That is a huge problem to progress here. And this was a lawsuit that was initiated my first week on the job in 2019. So this is not a lawsuit that we as a state became more aggressive on and got out ahead and did something. We were sued first and have been in litigation since that time. So it's, again, not satisfying. I wish I had a better answer for you. But I would personally choose not to eat wild game that was hunted around Lake Holloman because of the PFAS issues.
The problem with that is it's not an isolated situation. Like, a mallard could get on a front and fly hundreds of miles from an afternoon to an evening. And so, like, to just say, well, is it in the plume? Maybe you are, maybe you should be tested. The thing is I don't live here, but I recreate and I participate with these environments daily. And so I also need my blood drawn. I also need numbers looked at. I should look at my wife's numbers because some of those things with the complication of carbon, and so my wife and maybe even my boys need their blood tested. We're not in the plume and we're not right up against Holloman Lake. But I think that the problem, unless we do something about it, we're not really solving any of it. Like, you could stop drinking water, you could stop watering your farms in the plume, But if you're an avid outdoorsman, which most of our recreation or our environment, our economy depends upon, then that's not really it's not really a great direction. But I would love to get my blood tested. I would love to work on other things that we can do, and I appreciate your time.
Can I, and one last thing to say to you and your family. Yes, I agree with you. You should get your blood tested, and if the state of New Mexico can facilitate that, we have to think about that. How we could do it is my answer. But I'd like to see that happen for more New Mexicans. But the one thing that I will say is having you at this meeting and having someone like yourself stand up and talk about your organization, that gives me a better ammunition for when I go back into negotiations with when the feds are shut down, so when they open back up, go back into negotiations, and I have more local stories, more community support, and I think we as New Mexicans, like what's happening here in Curry County or Otero County, we need the whole of New Mexico to stand up and say, we've had it. We recognize the bases are huge economic engines. None of us are any less patriotic than the other. This is not about that whatsoever. What it is about is that you should be able to have both. And why should you be able to have both? Economic, patriotism, and a healthy environment and healthy people, because other states are getting it left and right. So we have to say enough with the lawsuit, enough with delay tactics. We need cleaned up right now so you can take more vets into the field and get and help them. So I fully stand with you. You're making great points.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Lerner. I'm actually a deputy with Curry County currently. I have 2 questions and a statement. My statement is I appreciate you guys being here. This has been very informative. My first question is my house literally is less than a mile from the plume, but it's northeast. Has there been any indication, is it all staying in the paleo channel, or is it seeping into the more shallow water?
So thank you for your question. You're northeast of the plume or the base?
Of the actual plume, that yellow, the yellow plume. My house is less than about a mile.
Eric, I think you're only about a quarter mile from the plume.
Okay, we'll forgo that. So northeast of the plume, you said, by about a mile.
Or less.
Or less. And are you on private water, drinking water?
Yes, and it has been tested. I did the blood, my whole family did the blood testing. So we've done all that.
And has the drinking water showed any PFAS do you have PFAS in your drinking water?
No.
No. Okay, so let's go back to your original question. Remind me of your original question one more time.
Okay, so is the PFAS that, because you guys mentioned it's going 15 to 20 feet per year.
Right.
Is it staying in the paleo channel, or is it actually seeping into the shallower water? Because we're not in a paleo channel, we're in the shallower water.
Yeah, and how deep is your well, do you know?
300 plus feet.
Okay, so in general, what we've seen from the sampling that we've done, maybe to the sampling that we've done indicates that the plume is largely following the paleo channel. Okay. I think additional sampling of those perforations into the Ogallala, into the aquifer at different depths, whether your well is 150 feet or 600 feet, would be helpful data points for us to know, so that we could be more conclusive about answering your question. But just generally speaking, what we've seen from the sampling we've done is that it's following the paleo channel.
So my second question is, being a deputy, I'm all over the county, and kind of going off of some of this, is the animals that are being irrigation that's being used in the plume area, you know, it's in the plants, which the animals eat, and then the manure that the animals produce. I'm gonna be pragmatic, I don't think there's any fixing to this, there's just management now. So what, is the state looking at any kind of management as far as like livestock, not wild animals, because that's a whole different ballgame, but the management of livestock and the consuming of that and the plants that they're consuming, etc.
Yeah, that's a great question. So FDA has requirements for milk products. So if you think about where are we going to see if the bioaccumulation that you're talking about happening from the water to the alfalfa to the fields to the soil, etc., continues to grow or continues to compound, that bioaccumulation compounds, what's going to happen is it's going to either go through a circular process where it goes back into the groundwater, or it's going to exit through, dairy cows drinking the water or eating the feed. And so we're also ensuring that milk products are safe and that we don't see concentrations rising in milk products. And the New Mexico Department of Agriculture is leading that effort with the dairy farmers in the area. But I think your point about management is accurate. That's what we have to do, is manage the ways in which PFAS could be getting into each other, like ourselves, or getting into our food supply. And we've kind of covered those bases with drinking water, cow watering, wells, etc., and then looking at the milk products. So that's our kind of sentinel way of ensuring that there's no PFAS getting sort of out of this environment and causing a risk that we didn't think of. The other piece that maybe is relevant for those who are in the dairy industry in the room and those who are supported by it is there's been a lot of talk out of Washington, D.C. over the years about whether or not biosolids that are applied to farmers' fields should be listed as a hazardous waste, or how do we handle those? And could a farmer have liability simply because the Air Force caused that to get into the feed or the water? The state of New Mexico has taken the position this last session in state law to ensure that farmers are not going to be held liable for pollution that's caused by a military base. So here in Curry County, farmers using biosolids will not face the same sort of legal challenges that they could in other states. So we've insulated the farmers because they're not the cause of the pollution, right? It's the military. So we've taken that legal step to try to help the farming industry here. But that's an important legal step, but it's also important to note that we're monitoring the water, the milk, etc.
Well, I'm talking beef cattle too, not just dairy.
Yeah.
Beef cattle as well.
Yeah, and again, I asked our Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Whitty. He has his whole team has a meeting in Las Cruces. So I don't know that we have anyone from New Mexico Department of Agriculture here this evening, but my understanding is they're doing all that monitoring of the meat products, the dairy products, etc. Thank you for that question.
Anybody else? I don't see any hands. I have a question. Young man, I saw that you had some duck calls. Yeah? Would you like to show us what they sound like? That was lovely, thank you. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. All right. Okay, and then we just have a couple closing remarks. I'd like to have Kevin Piney with the Department of Health has a few things to say, and then probably Secretary Kenny also probably has some things to say. So take it away, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. All right. Thanks, everyone. I think sort of interagency work at the state level, bringing health, environment together with the support of the legislature. It's really how government should be working. I think the participation from the community is really what's been moving this forward. I think that PFAS is a challenging issue with the health space. There is no way to remove it from one's body once it's in there. But I hope that through this process and through some of the resources that we'll put on the New Mexico Department of Health website, there may not be a way to remove PFAS from the body, but a lot of the things that you may be at higher risk for through exposure are treatable. And so we really want you just to be aware, working with your providers, to determine additional screenings that you might need, whether it's cholesterol more regularly than you normally would have it. And so I did want to also say that I know there's probably going to be future health questions that come up. It's an evolving science. The medicine on PFAS is evolving very rapidly. And so I did want to provide a resource, our New Mexico Department of Health helpline, which is 1-833-796-8773. We have some cards with that contact information up front, but it's not just PFAS related questions. This hotline is staffed 7 to 8 during the week and 10 to 4 on the weekend by nurses. They have resource guides on where you can provide or get providers across the state. If you're underinsured or don't have insurance, they can help connect you to places that can see you for your medical needs. And so if you have future questions, feel free to call the helpline. They also have Chelsea's phone number, so a lot of the PFAS related questions just get triaged to our team, and then the nurse calls you back with some responses. And so I like to plug that service when I can. So in the coming weeks, you'll certainly see adjustments to the website. We'll include a lot more information on the FAQs, but also we're compiling lists of resources. And we hope through conversations that includes locations where individuals may be able to go to pursue their own blood testing if they're still concerned. So we have Dr. Loaf here. If anyone has specific medical questions, wants to go through reports, anything like that, he's got a lot of experience in both PFAS and blood exposure, and so he's a great person to talk to. But again, I just want to thank everyone for your time, the cordial collaboration, and allowing us to come into your community and work together to try and improve the environmental conditions and health outcomes.
I'm going to just wrap this up briefly this evening. And I just wanted to just say a couple of last closing remarks, which, there is not one day, and I can say this with all sincerity to each and every one of you, there is not one day at the Environment Department that we don't talk and try to turn our talk into action for this community specifically. There is not one day that we're not saying, are we doing enough? Are we doing the right thing? Did we get the right message out? Have we heard from the community? Are they frustrated? Are they happy? What's the anxiety level of even us talking about this with them? What does that produce? So there is not one day we don't think and work and try to solve problems here. But again, I invite you to tell us, I think you're not solving all our problems. I think you need to solve a different problem. I think we need something else from you. You should not be shy. You know how many people tell us what they want us to do every single day? Use your voice and tell us, your government, what you want more of in this community. And we get it's scary. We get that the numbers and the science and the blood and all of that can be a scary conversation. But if we've shown you nothing, we're not going to go away. We're going to keep showing up, we're going to keep engaging, we're going to keep discussing, and we're going to keep solving problems. And we don't feel like any ask that you have of us is too much of an ask. It's not. Ask. And we do want to express our thanks to you, all of you who have come out and continue to come out. I also want to express my thanks to my team and this team that's up here. I think some of us are actually now voting in Curry County for how much time they spend down here. But again, in all sincerity, I know we try to make a little bit of humor come into this, or a little bit of lightness, because we know the topic is heavy. And we just want you to know that everything we do, you're in every single thought we have every day. So, with that, thank you to Senator Woods who came. I know Congresswoman Teresa Ledger Fernandez had a representative here tonight that I didn't introduce. But again, we appreciate the support of our elected officials as well. Again, thank you all for coming out. We're going to be here if you have any private or one-on-one questions you want to ask us. Thanks.